Roll it, Gabby.
Okay.
You're doing the intros.
So let me
Roll it, Gabby. Hit it.
Huh? All right.
Ken
All
said
right.
roll it.
I'm ready. Okay. Well, all right. Well, thank you for joining us today. And I want to welcome you to the Industry Partnership Practical Tools for Meeting Goals webinar. I am Gabby Temple, the project manager for Create National Energy. I'm going to change slides now. Just a little bit of business before we get started. If you have not been to our website before, I encourage you to visit at createenergy.org. You will find a wealth of faculty resources here, including curriculum modules, our Women in Energy page, which is dedicated to recruiting more females in the energy sector, along with our upcoming events. And here are some of those events. We have an upcoming virtual solar event this April, and we are taking applications for that right now. And we are going to have 2 in-person workshops in Madison, and we're going to have actually more of those this summer. We just don't have those advertised just yet. And we have an upcoming coffee hour this November 20th. And you can find all of those on our events tab on the website, or you can email me with any questions or to sign up for those. And next. And now on to our presenters. So I am super excited to tell you about our 2 presenters today. Each time I hear them present, I learn something new, and it is always fun. Mary Slowinski and Rachael Bower began their work in this area with the Working Partners Project, a targeted research project that looked into industry education partnership practices across the NSF ATE community and produce resources and findings such as the industry partnership models, best practices, and tools for assessing these relationships. The Working Partners workshops, led by the same team, are informed by this research and provide support, time, and resources for educators seeking to develop and sustain successful industry relationships. Mary has also been involved with Create in a variety of capacities over the years, and was delighted to serve as an instructional lead for Create's 3 international study tours. I should also note that Rachael heads the ATE, oh shoot, Rachael, I am blanking right now.
Hey, AT Central.
Thank you so much. It just totally blanked as I started to say it.
No worries at all. I get it. Believe me, it's Friday.
Yeah, it's Friday. And at this time, I'm going to start turning off mics and cameras to reduce feedback during the presentation. So please put any questions you guys might have in the chat, and there is going to be time for Q&A. And Mary and Rachael will let you know when is a good time to turn them back on. And with that, I am going to turn this over to Mary and Rachael. And that is all I have right now. So I'm going to stop my share. And here we go.
And I'll start my share. How's that?
Awesome.
Just like that. There we go.
There you go. And please feel free to pop questions into chat, you guys, as we go along. Mary and I'll keep an eye on those and feed them to Mary or answer them in chat if it's something that I feel like I can just answer quickly about the presentation. But if you know me and Mary, we are not a formal team. We are pretty informal. I think informal might be, I don't even, what word would we use, Mary? I'm afraid to even go there, frankly.
Yeah, it depends on who's looking at it and who's describing it, I suppose. All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. And thank you for those of you that are listening to this as a recording, because from what Gabby tells me, Create has a lot of folks that come in after the fact and listen to these. So thank you for joining us. As Gabby Adam, she went ahead and introduced us. We can skip this slide, just kidding. Rachael, I'm Mary Slowinski, Rachael Bower. We know who we are, and you've heard our story. Before we get started, I just wanted to do a quick little poll to see who's in the room. We always like to know who we're talking to. It always is helpful. So we're going to go ahead and launch just a little quick poll and have you just fill out this little, just really quickly. First of all, the role that most closely matches your day-to-day work. And then the time zone you're in, always nice to know where folks are dialing in from, as they used to say. And then in terms of your work with industry partnerships, where you are roughly.
Oh, the Jeopardy music that we always say.
No, that we always say we need to have. We really need to get that figured out. It would make it so nice. Okay, we're at about 73%. We'll give it one more second for those of you that are still kind of trying to find the polls and make them work. All right, that's 93. We're going to call it. All right, so here's what we have, just so that we can, we like to share it with everyone. So faculty, academic program lead, PI co-P, we've got an evaluator in the room, we've got grant manager, we got a nice little spread. That's
nice.
this is a nice mix, and it's what we usually see. So it's good. We know this group. We got some in Eastern, we got 3 in Eastern, 4 in Central, Pacific, and other.
I know. Oh, that's Arizona time zone, which just cracks me up. I guess that is not, you're right. That's not really mountain. That's Arizona, the world.
I have to remember to put that in when I ask this question.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then in terms of your work with industry partners, new, there's only got one person who's coming onto it first, somewhat experienced, and then some more very experienced, and it does not apply, which I'm just going to say, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'm glad.
It might be the evaluator who.
That's true. Doesn't do the direct thing. Thank you, Rachel. See how we are? One person asks a question, the other answers. This is us. All right, so that's kind of gives us a chance to know who's in the room. So let's go ahead and move on. So to just really quickly recap, Gary's already kind of introduced us. I just want to just give a really fast run through of what Working Partners is, just to kind of ground what we're doing. So we began, as Gabby had mentioned, as a targeted research project. Our goals for the research were basically to look at the successful industry education partnership practices across ATE. Actually, successful really we could take out of there because we looked at them all, and kind of bring those down to something that we could see what we could do to help others that are doing this type of work. Methodology was mixed methods, which is common in social science. We were fortunate to use the ATPI survey each year, which has a very high response rate because it's mandatory, always a nice thing. And then we did interviews, focus groups, etc., and continued to vet our what we felt were our findings over time with the community. And these are just some of the the high level findings. One was the 8 partnership models, which we'll talk about a little more in depth in a moment. We also went back with those models and looked at the challenges, the impacts, and the implementation strategies. How are people, what are the best practices of using these various models? And this handout's on our website. We have other data up there as well. So another outcome, we found that there was really no tool or process for assessing these partnerships. It's really difficult to evaluate. Of course, they're volunteers, so we don't like to say assess or evaluate, but in fact, we need to, right? We need to know what's working and what's not working. And there wasn't really any kind of tool that we could find. Simultaneously, the Rux Group was an evaluation and research firm. They found the same thing. So we kind of work together to develop this and continue to evolve it. It's now kind of more of a dashboard than a rubric, but that's another of our outcomes. So another thing that we found during the research phase was that PIs had no training on how to do these really critical partnerships, these partnerships that were part and parcel of your ATE funding, but also as a professional technical program at a community college, at least in the state of Washington, we're required to have industry involvement. I mean, we're mandated to have 2 industry advisory boards at a minimum a year. But no one was giving anybody any help on how to do this. There wasn't any educational support for that, or professional development support for it. And none talked about, actually coming up with an industry partnership action plan, which is kind of the outcome from the workshops. So the workshops were born. We do them as virtual 8 weeks workshop. We meet once a week for 90 minutes on Zoom. That's a mix of presentations and cohort. The participants do work together in small groups and large, and we just talk through. We talk through everything. We go through a process, and there over the course of 8 weeks, each week is a very small little assignment that everyone does, and that builds that action plan, so that when you come out, you've got an action plan for yourself based on your goals, not on anything we're prescribing. So it's kind of almost like a machine. You come in with your goals, you come out with a short-term action plan at the end, and along the way, you also learn about partnership, how to initiate, how to recruit, sustaining partnerships, and a little bit about assessment. So it's kind of, that's around it as well. we've seen significant successes. The participants, when they are surveyed pre and post, show significant increases in confidence in the work that they're doing, and much more awareness and competency with doing planning for their partnerships and kind of assessing and following them. So we've been grateful and are very happy that we're seeing really strong results across 5 cohorts so far, and it's consistent. And then also what I think, and this is kind of less tangible, but definitely, especially just coming from the PI meeting last week, we really wanted to start building community around the issue of partnerships, because we say from the beginning, we will continue to say we do not have the answers, but your coworker may, or your peer across the country might, everybody's kind of struggling with the same set of challenges, and putting people together and letting them share what they're doing and their successes and their challenges allows for that collaborative knowledge building. And that's something that we really wanted these workshops to do. We got shifted to a virtual format. Thank you, COVID. That became a little more difficult, but now we're starting to bring people together in pre-conferences, and we're really seeing that community build. We're seeing people, you walk in and there's 3 people from 3 different cohorts all hanging out and talking together. So we're really looking to do that as well. So that's kind of where the workshops came from, research, and now this is more or less applied research. So that's us. That's a long but fairly thorough introduction to the work that we've been doing. All right. So today we're going to look at a couple of pieces of the workshops, and the first is the partnership models. We'll just go through these fairly quickly, but we would. Here we go. So remember, our goal was the top goal in our research project was to find these models. What are the models for partnerships and collaboration? So we started out by asking the AT community as a whole. We ended up with 40 plus types of partnership models. I mean, it was kind of crazy. Took those and brought them down to 18 groups with the help of a focus group, an advisory group of long-term principal investigators who had done a lot of this work. Brought it down to 18. Surveyed and interviewed the community more, sought out redundancies, did all of that. We ended up with 12. And then we went to the PI survey and started cultivating and just reiteratively finding out more and more until we got down to the 8. We wanted them to be mutually exclusive. So we wanted them to categorize these different types of involvement. So we got down to 8. Then we worked on the final definitions for them, for each of the models. And again, we vetted, and made sure that the descriptions made sense to the community. And that was that. So we had our models. So in the end, we had these 8 vetted, reviewed, refined, and mostly mutually exclusive models that describe how industry interacts with the projects, programs, and centers within ATE. So we're just going to run through each of them just briefly, just so that you can get an idea of what those are. So, of course, fortunately, alphabetically, it comes first, because this, of course, is the thing that everybody thinks of when they do partnerships, right? Advisory board or advisory council. This is something that everybody pretty much has and does and strives to do better. The built model out of CTC and Ann B. Healer's kind of baby is an example of as she would say, an advisory board on steroids. So this is a group that advises you, whether usually formally, but it can be informal as well. Curricular development review, the second model. Again, this is probably the second largest model in terms of usage. And this, of course, is just getting when you need to make a new cert, you've got to get industry involvement. When you're looking at your program and making sure it's still aligned with workforce need, you need to have industry review that. Again, the built model combines these. Usually the advisory board is part and parcel, the curricular development review team, but in other cases, people break these out, mostly because an advisory board tends to be a long-term commitment, and doing a DACOM or doing a course review or a program review is oftentimes just a short-term commitment or a short ask, as we would say. Faculty professional development. This is where your partners are actually helping get your faculty up to speed. They're helping bring them to the site, working with new equipment, practicing new techniques, etc. Examples of those: job shadows for faculty, externships, which is kind of a vague word, but those of you that do them know them. Peer mentoring, equipment access, etc. So that's faculty PD. This one not used that much, but hopefully will grow in time. This is incubation and entrepreneurship. Sometimes these are thought of as like maker spaces or labs or pitch contests. People will have somebody, they'll give a sticky thorny problem to students and have them come up with ideas of how to solve it, and then they'll pitch out the results. Essentially, though, it's economic development is what you're looking at with incubation and entrepreneurship. Instructional support, slightly different than PD. In fact, PD is your instructional staff getting trained up. Instructional support is interfacing with students. This is when industry assists you with educating the students. So it can be large. They can come in as an adjunct. That to me is pretty large, pretty big commitment. Or they can come in as a guest lecturer, or they can bring them to a tour. They can do a site visit. They can have students do a site visit. If you have competitions, they would be your judges. So this is ways that industry partners actually interact with your students to help further educational goals. Program support with the big mighty dollar sign, that's money, that's equipment, that's donations. Those are the things that are all usually hard goods or cash. However, we always like to include marketing efforts and different expertise that your board or your partner might bring. Maybe you get someone who's willing to do a social media campaign for you as a donation. That would be also program support. Sponsored research, I think of this as the kind of the twin of incubation and entrepreneurship. Sponsored research is something where you have a firm or a company that has something they need further developed. Oftentimes it'll be like back burner R&D projects that they just don't know, they don't have time to do or what have you. Some of the names that people use for these are contract. They often do it's contract/organization. So contract research, contract service, contract manufacturing. A great example of this is in biotech. Contract manufacturing, they actually have college students that are manufacturing teaching kits that are then sold to the high schools. So it's basically having your students do something on your site, on your campus, either research service or manufacturing, that then goes out as a product. And then last but certainly not least, what we call WBL, or workplace-based learning. And this would be internships, apprenticeships, student co-op learning, job shadows, any of those things we put under one umbrella. Originally, when we went from 16 to 12, I think, we went and put all of these under the one umbrella, because it's a kind of it's a wild west out there when you talk about what defines an internship versus an apprenticeship versus, there's a lot of gray zones on what different colleges and what different institutions call it and what different businesses call it, what different sectors call that. So we've just put it under the umbrella of workplace-based learning and figured that kind of covers that. Yeah, I'll leave that alone. So those are the models: advisory board, curriculum development review, faculty PD, incubation, instructional support, problem support, and the last two. So that's kind of those. Just give you kind of a whirlwind tour of the 8 partnership models. And guess what? Pop quiz time. Okay, we were going to go ahead and do these one at a time, but the polls have been built in a way that we're not. So we're going to go ahead and throw them all up. You're going to have to go through and do them all at once.
Mary, do you want me to pop the handout in?
Oh my goodness,
moment?
yes, that would be a great thing to do. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Rachel. Then my Vanna White. So what Rachel's putting into the chat is a handout that has the partnership models and their definitions. It's not the handout that you saw the picture of with all the results, but it's actually just the definitions so that you can have access to that.
Well, I'm going to try. Hold on. It's, as you know, sometimes.
I can pause until you get that up there, Missy.
There we go. All right. Leave. There you go.
There it is. All right. So to download that, for those of you that aren't familiar, I think we all are by now, like painfully familiar with Zoom. You can just click on that document and download it. And you'll be using that later also. So if you just want to take a moment and do that, it's probably not a bad idea. And then I will go ahead and I will launch the polls. I'll give you a minute just to make sure, those of you that want to download, that you can. And then we'll go ahead and launch these polls. So for these, it's just going to give you some examples, and then you pick the model that applies. All right, here we go. And I'll be quiet now. I would usually do these one at a time, but Gabby messed me up.
I'm sorry. I thought I did it right.
We really do need music, Rach.
I know it's even more obvious with the longer wait while
With the
people.
long, usually we would do one and then we'd come back and we'd like talk about it and do one. So now you guys have like this mountain of questions in front of you. Sorry about that. All right, but we're getting
This
some.
will take a little bit of time for people to read through too.
Yeah, we'll take our time. We could sing the Jeopardy song. Do, 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 do. Then we wouldn't have to pick up. Well, it probably still would be a copyright thing, huh? We'll have to come up with our own. Get some kind of. Nothing with a TikTok though, that makes it feel too pressured. Yeah. And there's a couple in there that are a little tricky. So on purpose. All right, almost. We've got 70%. $80. All right, I'm ending
Yeah, I
it.
think we're good.
Call it. All right, so the first one, internships, apprenticeships, job shadow, co-op learning. Yes, workplace-based learning, 100%. Everyone gets an A on that one. Way to go. The next one, equipment donations, scholarship funds, pro bono, marketing contributions, program support. Yes, that's how we look at it. Instructional support, we got a couple of those. Does anybody want to talk about what they were thinking there? You turn on your mic if you want to contribute. You can also stay silent, just say never mind. Okay. All right. I can see instructional support, scholarship fund feels that way. But again, remember, instructional support is more interfacing between the industry partner and students directly, not necessarily to remove. The next one, guest lecturer, site tour guide, adjacent teacher, adjunct teacher, and competition judge. We would think of this as instructional support.
I do feel like I understand advisory board though, because lots of people have their advisory board members doing, I mean, this is where the lines get blurry. Mary and I always talk about this.
And program support, although we're looking, when we look at program support, you're thinking more hard goods or professional services that are external to actually teaching. They'd be separate. So program support is, think of it as dollars, dollars and goods. Advisory board, yes, they would probably roll these, but yes, instructional support, this is where they're actually interfacing again with students. Number 4, course review, etc. That's curriculum dev and review. So course review, key competency identification, that's often what you'll do with what they call a DACM. Program outcomes, drew expectations. So program support again is more money and goods. So that would be different. Instructional support is facing, industry with the students. An advisory board, and again, this I think is where it does definitely get murky, because if you're using the built model, which I know a lot of people have been exposed to and are starting to adopt or have adopted, that's definitely blended. Your advisory board is who does this work. So I can understand some differences there. And then last, peer-to-peer mentoring, externship, on-site training. And this is always interesting because I ask this question, I always love to see it come in this way, because yeah, who are you talking about? I mean, when you're talking about students, this is very similar to what students would do in workplace-based learning. The difference is the peer-to-peer. So you're talking about two professionals working together, an educator and industry, to deepen the faculty skills, deepen their instructional knowledge, or their knowledge, their subject matter knowledge. So it's a little bit different than we would think of for workplace-based learning, as well as advanced certification support. There were people that reported industry would buy so many seats for certifications and then share the extra codes with faculty. Rarely would that, it might be with students as well, but it's, in this case, we were thinking of it more as faculty. So I think that's that. So thank you. Excellent work, team. Did well. Gabby, I like turning the cameras off, but it's a little bit weird because all I see are fixed faces and I don't know how. And no one's laughing at my jokes, nothing. So it's a little bit freaking me out, but I'll survive. All right, moving on. Get back to this. Here we go. So
It
now
is
we're
hard
going
to talk to black boxes. I agree with you.
It is with names. I just see
Yeah.
Ken W in all
Yeah.
lowercase. It's like, wow, that's interesting. I know who's back there, but okay. So next step. Okay, so we talked about we talked a little bit about how you look at this defining overall industry involvement, and this is where kind of the rubber starts to hit the road. So let's go ahead and let's jump in. So the partnership models, which we've just discussed, right? They're a means to an end. They're not supposed to be any kind of, I mean, they're great and they're interesting, and it's almost like an academic kind of thing to think about. But in reality, identifying those models really helps us group our activities, the things that it helps us organize what we're doing with industry into really useful categories, because of course we have some best practices for them. They're more easily defined, they also stretch our thinking a little bit when you start thinking beyond the industry advisory board and the curriculum dev box. They also are able to, you can use those models as a framework. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about, to sort out how industry can actually support our goals. So you take the partners along with the goals, right? That's kind of the idea. So here's how that works. First thing you do is you refine your goals to make sure they're actionable. They may well be, but oftentimes we write our goals for our funding. We don't necessarily revisit them. Maybe we revisit them at the annual review or the annual report point of time, where we're saying, okay, we're going to do this, we did this, and we're doing this next year. But there's a difference between an actionable goal and a goal that's stated, let's just say, and we'll go into that in just a second. We'll talk some more. So you get your goals reworked, or if you need to, rework them into actionable goals. And then step two, you go in and you take those goals and you look at the models and you say, okay, a given partner who's part of our advisory board, how could they support this goal? What would be all of the actions that they could take to support this goal? Okay, another model that would really could support this goal would be workplace-based learning. The partners that are already hosting our interns, they could definitely help us do this as well. So you go through and you identify which of the models could help support that goal. And then you list out the activities for each of those things. You list out the involvement, the actions that industry could take. And then step three, you bring all of that together for each model, regardless of goal. And you eliminate duplicates. And now you have a master list for industry involvement for that partner model. Let me use my example that I'll use for the rest. Let's take an example if you want to expand the number of internship sites you have. So basically you're trying to expand your WBL. So you sit down and you're looking at that and you're like, well, who could help do that? Advisory board, obviously. And you look at a few other models. Yeah, this could, that could. And you say, our current internship site people, our workplace-based learning partners could also help with this. But when you start to drill down and look at the two different ways that those people could do that, the advisory board maybe is going to advise, they could brainstorm ideas for new internship sites. They may have people in their network they can connect you with. They may be willing to reach out on your behalf. When you look at your workplace-based learning partners, the ones that are already hosting interns, they could do those things probably as well. But in addition, they could do something like a partnering. They could be willing to mentor or let someone see what they're doing with students, so that they a new internship site maybe could come by and job shadow, I guess it would be, to see how they're working that on the floor in their space. They could write testimonials, simple little, or do video testimonials where they're like, wow, these interns are the best thing since sliced bread. They've done such a great job for our, that's ways that they could actually produce things that would help you meet that goal of expanding your internship sites. So when you're looking at those models, you start to see different activities, different actions that those types of partners would take within that role that they're playing. And then you take all of them, you go across all your goals, you say, okay, here's all the things that we've identified that our workplace-based learning people can help us with, and you put it all down on one list, and there's your master list. Now, no one's going to do all of that. No partner, unless they're, I don't know, they have nothing to do in their life and they just want to like serve you endlessly, which is not normal, but maybe they aren't going to do all those things. But now you know what you need as a whole. Maybe you'll never get all of it, but you have that master list. And in a perfect world, you can start aggregating different industry members who want to help in different ways to meet your needs on that list. So that's kind of the overarching kind of trajectory of this. So, and of course, the combined list from all the models, if you look at that, then that really is your master ideal industry partner involvement. So creating actionable goals, that's step one, right? We got to get the goals down to actionable. So briefly, one way that we've found that has really resonated with folks, and this is not new, you may have heard it, are SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So you take a goal and you rework it so that these are all being achieved within your goal. Why do you do this? Because if you've got this going, you're going to be able to see your goals much more clearly. You're going to be able to apply metrics so that you can measure how closely you are or not hitting the goal. They're also time-based, which means they're going to give you, when you have them written in this way, you can actually break out next steps, prioritize your steps, prioritize your actions. So taking a goal from non-actionable to actionable really does a tremendous amount. This is something that, this is outside of partnerships even. This is something that I think I would strongly recommend on an annual basis. When you're doing your annual reports, if you're funded through NSF and you have to do that, look at your goals each year and see, hey, are these actionable or are they just kind of flat? Here's an example. We're going to form an industry advisory board. That's a goal that you could easily write into a grant proposal. And then you would yak on about how you're going to bring in all these different people, blah, blah, blah. It's like a standard kind of like thing that you would put in there. But for you, in terms of planning your project and figuring out how to get industry involved stuff, that's a really vague thing. It's a vague ask also. If you go to industry and say, hey, we want to do an advisory board, would you be willing? That's a really, your close partners that you know well, or people that you know in industry, are probably going to give you a yes and give a pass. But if you're trying to solicit from people that you don't know, giving them just a vague thing like that is really difficult because they're not sure what you're talking about. What do you mean by that? So a goal refinement would look like this. So refined as a SMART goal, it would read more like something like this. Project staff, so who, will do what? Recruit 15 industry members from regional employers who hire our graduates. So now you're starting to scope in, right? You're saying, okay, we want people who are hiring our graduates. That's who we need right now. Now, maybe this isn't necessarily what everyone would need, but this is what we need within the next 4 months. So you're making it time-based so that you have, tick-tock, the clock is ticking, to serve as the project advisory board and ensure curricular currency. That allows you to make sure that it's relevant, right? It's going to roll up to your greater goals. So that's an example of how you can take something from a perfectly fine goal, but refine it as a SMART goal so it can really inform your planning, your management, and also how you discuss this with partners. So here's, and then because Mary and Rachel we always like to make things a little more simple. There's the long version and then there's the Mad Libs version. This is what we call our Mad Libs version because it's basically a template for quickly taking those goals and restating them as SMART goals. It's a shortcut. So here it is. And you would fill in the green areas. Key players or teams, who's going to do it, will, and what are they going to do? What is the specific and measurable? This is where you build in the specific and measurable pieces. What are they going to do? And when are they going to do it by? And then why? What's the relevant result or benefit? That's going to hit all the marks for a SMART goal. And of course, it's much easier than trying to brainstorm and look at each one. It's a little bit quicker and easier. So here is it applied. So you see how this works. Here's the key players or teams is the project staff. What are they going to do? They're going to recruit 15 industry members from regional employers who hire our graduates specifically. And there's the next 4 months, and then relevant result. So that's kind of how just a quick overview of some of the ways that you can rework the goals so that they're tighter, they're more specific, they've got metrics built into them. I mean, all of these like big pluses. So that's kind of the SMART goal part of this. So that's what we've knocked out of the way now. Specific goals plus partnership models. We're trying to get to that point where we know what we're asking of partners. So step one is just to get those goals refined so that you can actually pull all that information out of them rather than have to make it up each time. All right, so step two again was for each goal. Now you're going to use the partnership model to identify what each type of industry partner can do to support that goal. All right. So I think that I go on from here. Yeah. So the steps for that, the way that we do it anyway, something that's worked well for our participants, is that you start with each goal. You take a goal, and you, like I described to you earlier, you decide which models can help with this work. And I think that this exercise can be really, really helpful because this is where you do stretch your thinking. You get a little creative and start saying, well, you know what? I never thought about it, but those folks that are coming in and doing guest lectures, they actually could help us with increasing our reach into underrepresented populations and reaching those students that are underserved because, they have ties to this or they're doing other work with this area or something. So this allows you to kind of stretch your thinking a little bit. And then when you go back to those intersections, you're able to brainstorm, okay, what specifically can industry do to help us meet this goal? What can this type of partner do to help the goal? And then when you have all of those, you've got those, you can actually clearly communicate them. Now, instead of saying, we want you to help us, we're looking to expand our internship sites, can you help us out? You're like, hey, I know you've been doing internships for us and we're looking to expand. We'd love to have you help us. Here's 7 things. Here's a little 7 items that we're looking for help with. Do any of these, or could you commit to helping with any of these? And they're specific. Will you agree to let someone come internship shadow you? Would you agree to do a short testimonial about the benefits of having our interns? Would you be willing to participate in a brainstorm of new sites, etc.? So what you're asking industry is actually very specific. And then someone can look at that and say, no way am I mentoring, don't have time, way too busy, can't do that. But you know what? I could do a short little, what do you mean by a testimonial, a paragraph or 2? I could probably do that. Or I'll be more than happy to come on a Zoom call for 40 minutes and brainstorm with your advisory board about new sites. So they're able to pick what kind of action they really want to do, rather than coming to them with these kind of global, broad things that require all kinds of discussion to try and figure out what it is you're actually asking. So with that, we are going to go ahead and we're going to try this out. And this is another one of those polls. It's kind of like
It's my fault again.
And I can't edit them. We were going to try really hard to edit them. So Rachel already put the partner definitions in the chat. So if you haven't pulled those down, you're going to probably need them for this. And maybe what I'll do, yeah, I know what I'm going to do, Gabby. I'm going to make them do it on paper, and then we'll open up the poll. All right. So I'm going to give you a goal, and they're SMART goals. And they come from, actually, some of them come straight from our participants. So I won't disclose who, but we're going to give you a goal. And then what the idea is that you sit down, you look at that goal and you think about, now, which of these models could support this goal? So let's go ahead without any more yakking. So program staff, there's who, will increase recruitment of underrepresented and underserved students in our service area by 50% over the next 2 academic years. So which partners in which category could help support this goal? So take a minute. If you've downloaded that, you can go ahead and jot down those.
I also popped the link to the partnership models, which is online too. So that way, if for some reason you have any trouble,
you can just look at it on your screen.
You can just take a peek at it online. Yeah.
Thank you, Miss Rachel. That's good. We should do that every time.
Yeah. So
learn
how long are we
something.
giving folks to do this?
You know, I think, why don't we go ahead and move to the next one? Because they're also, Gabby, when you built the poll, did you put did you put these goals in there? Or is it just, I don't
Hey,
know.
Maris, do you want to paste these into chat so people can grab them if you're gonna
Yeah.
move? You know
Yes,
what I mean?
yes,
I can't nab that.
yeah. Sure, Rachel. Sure, I will. Here, we'll go
Go.
ahead. and do this.
Perfect. Perfect.
Mhm. Ignore what you see behind the curtain. Okay, there's that one. Right. Two. I'm showing my hand. Right. That one. That's a great idea, Rach. Thank you for thinking of that. Oh, it takes a village, right, Rach?
Yeah, it does. Particularly on a Friday. I don't know about everybody else, but Mary and I were talking about how tired we were when we came back from the PI conference this year. And I was, Celeste mentioned it too. We were on something with Celeste and she was like, I think we were all just exhausted.
Yeah.
And we have the time change coming up this weekend, which is super confusing. I keep having to remember I'm going to have to move my clock around. The person in Arizona, however, will not, I believe.
Yeah, bless them. All right, so there's sample goal 1. I'm going to just go ahead now that they're all up. There's sample goal 2, and then there's sample goal 3. So I'm going to launch the poll. It's a little wonky.
I tried so hard too, and I thought I had these right for you guys.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
We don't mind. We love you anyway.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so the poll's up. You see the poll on the screen. Hopefully it's not obscuring too much. And as Rachel so adequately told us, here's the 3 goals on the left side. So goal 1 is question 1, goal 2 is question 2, and goal 3 is question 3. So I hope you guys can navigate that and not be too confused by our sleight of hand. And we'll just give you a minute to kind of think through on those.
I think it should say which partnership models. It says, did you could contribute?
Oh.
Yeah, did you? Just could.
Which partnership models do you feel like could contribute to meeting each goal? So in other words, you're trying to think through as you look at it, which of these partnership models do you feel like you could utilize in order to meet each goal? There you go.
Stop. Right now, stop. That crazy old dog, sorry.
There we go. People are starting to jump in. I also just want to, Mary, are we supposed to end? We said we had 45 minutes. It's now quarter till. So I just am not sure. Gabby, are we going to the top of the hour?
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, so we were theoretically starting at quarter after and going to the top of the hour.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, fabulous. I just, making sure we don't bump into a time thing.
And I don't want to like interrupt what people are thinking, but again, the idea here is that you start kind of expanding your thinking about how different types of partners can help us reach these goals. So many times over the course of working both with existing now with the workshops and definitely during the research, you just kept seeing kind of, you get in this kind of tunnel thinking. You know, we've always used our board to do this, or we've always used, you know, whatever. And it's kind of fun to start thinking a little more broadly. And I'll full disclosure, I think that the sponsored research and incubation models are underutilized. And we're seeing, you know, now we're seeing more undergraduate research efforts, which kind of fold into that a little. It's just exciting to see those things starting to kind of move a little bit. Because they're interesting ways to both incorporate industry, but also give students actual hands-on work experience. All right, we're at about 70%, so we're gonna just I'll stop yakking.
You know, I think we're close enough, Mayor. We're at 13.
All right, let's do it. Thank you, Rach. All right, so the first one, our first goal was that basically increasing recruitment of underrepresented students. So one said advisory board. We had no one on curriculum development review. That makes sense. A lot of it was program support, which is usually, money and hard goods. And I'm assuming that's probably marketing. I'm thinking mostly. And then workplace-based learning is another way that you could reach out. So does anybody want to pop on and comment on what they thought?
Why they chose what they chose and how they would, yeah.
Anybody have something that they want to share in terms of when they started thinking about this recruitment issue?
Or you're also welcome to put it in chat. So,
Ken.
Yeah, I was just putting in the chat. I'm the one that selected the advisory board just because I didn't honestly see that, at least in our experience, that any of our industry folks necessarily helped us a whole lot on this goal. And I wasn't too sure that any one of these models necessarily directly addressed it either. So
Yeah,
it was kind of a choice of default for me.
it makes sense. And it's surprising actually you're the only one that put advisory board, because usually there's quite a few folks, and I don't know, maybe we weren't clear. It was models, it was plural. You could choose as many as you thought would help. I hope that was clear.
Oh, I didn't see that. I was trying to pick the
Well,
one choice.
oh yeah, we probably didn't. We may have that may have been our mistake. Ken,
We're
for
all
sure.
like confused by our polls, so it's all Gabby's fault, basically. I'm just saying.
Oh my God. Mary,
It's only because I know her and love her that I
I
say
totally take the blame.
this. No,
terrible.
I'm just being terrible because I love Gabby and she knows I love her, so I can play with her that way.
And I'm good with that.
Usually, and I guess I'm sure you weren't the only one that misunderstood that. Advisory board is often somebody that helps with that. But it's been interesting over the years. We've also had in program support. Anybody want to speak to why they clicked program support? Or I'll guess, because I do that.
And you're also again, write in chat if you don't feel like jumping on.
It works too. One of the things that program support I think does is that you do sometimes have expertise. Maybe you have a board member who has 1 foot in education and 1 foot in another. Maybe they volunteer in somewhere with the population you're trying to target. They can help. Here's one. Lindsay says, I put program support because recruiting underrepresented students enhances the program and deepens ties with industry, because industry needs to also hire. That's actually 100% true. The other thing that I think in time when we've asked this question previously and we've talked over the course of hearing a lot of the ways people do things, people find that, like, for example, the workplace-based learning can be really helpful because oftentimes those sites can sometimes bring in more they can be used as kind of an enhancement or an enticement. You can actually do this workplace-based learning. And again, program support oftentimes is because of the marketing aspects too, that people sometimes have marketing things. Absolutely. Edward put in, advisory board members may have knowledge of culture of underserved population to recruit from. Absolutely. So, I mean, and I think the really interesting thing is there's no right answer here. You would know who these different partners are, and you would then, probably shift and change the types of models that you would put this with. And again, then you would sit down. If this was all, you're just starting out, you'd say, okay, well, we feel like these are the different types of partners that could help us with this. How specifically could they help us? So for an example, what you just wrote up there, Edward, would be one of the examples. You're like, okay, who in our advisory board has knowledge of culture? So the bullet would be share knowledge of, culture of underserved population, share network of relationships with service agencies or things that are serving these students, etc. So you would go ahead and you would use the model to kind of break it down into action items that somebody in that group would do. All right, let's go to the second one. And the second one was program faculty. This is like keeping everything up, right? Program faculty and administration will ensure lab facilities and teaching staff skills are sufficient to meet workforce expectations. Now, of course, this is two separate beasts, right? You've got your gear and your labs, and you've got your teaching skills of your faculty. So those right away put you into kind of that program support, which would be goods and money, and it puts you into the the element of workplace-based, I'm sorry, the element of instructional support, or faculty PD more specifically. So, and you see the spread, you guys did exactly what would be expected. And again, this is one of those things you would go into the intersection, you'd say, okay, we need updated labs, we need updated teaching skills. Who on our advisory board, what are the specific, not who, but what are the specific ways that our advisory board could help with that? They could solicit funding. They could, use their networks to try and find his stuff. Then you go down to your folks that are already doing faculty professional development. They're already helping your faculty get up to speed. How can they help us meet this? Who do they know that they could spread that with? Would they be willing to help with certification costs, et cetera? So you start to get that what figured out. All right, let's go to the third one in the interest of time. And this one was by August 2024, the internship coordinator, bless their soul, will have located and confirmed 5 new internship sites for student placement. So here you are looking for expanding those internships. And here you are again, just like we discussed in my example, the advisory board can be super helpful at finding new sites for those types of interns. So can your folks in workplace-based learning. They too can help you expand that network. But anybody that's involved in your program, anybody who's been giving program support, money or goods, they may know places. If they're, if they're supporting your program in that way, they may know of someone that they could advocate for you. And the same with the others. Each of these models can support every goal. Every goal could technically, theoretically be supported by any type of model. But the idea is to get it down into which ones really are going to help us get to the goals and what are the actions that they're going to take to help us get there. So that's kind of the idea.
And I think it also helps you start to think about, I think Mary's talked about this already, but lots of people fall into the pattern of leaning into advisory board and curriculum dev. And they don't sort of necessarily think about some of the other models as much. So this is a great exercise, obviously, for anybody, but it's super helpful if you're writing a new grant, or if you're just sort of maybe not getting the results you'd like, to kind of think through well, wait a minute, what haven't we tried? What other things haven't we thought about playing around with in terms of these models? And they do, Mary says this all the time too, the lines are blurry between a lot of these, right? They really are. And sometimes it's not ooh, we have these segregated models. They blend a little bit, but it's still a nice way to think through it. And it's a nice thing to do with the rest of your staff, to sit down and look at the models and have a conversation about what you're using and what's working and what you feel like isn't. I think it's really a helpful exercise. And it's part of what happens in the workshop is that people get some headspace to think about this stuff in a way that they don't normally get, right? They have 8 weeks to kind of really do a deep dive and think about their industry models and what's working and what isn't, or what they'd like to see happening that isn't, or, whatever.
And truthfully, we're putting you through 3 weeks of stuff in 1.5 hour.
In 45 minutes.
Usually these would be extremely small steps. You would do each of these and really spend some time thinking about these things with your team, and developing these action items, really, because ultimately that's what we want to get to. We want to have that laundry list of stuff. So, so again, you start with a given goal, you identify the model that'll help with the work, you look at the intersection, you figure out the what and how. And then after you have all the supports that you need for each model type, then you can look across all of that. You can clearly communicate. You can go to your advisory board. You can go to your workplace-based learning partners. You can go to your program support partners and say, hey, here's a laundry list of all the things that you could help us with. Not the goals, but the actual things that they can do. which is a really, what we found over time has been much more effective when you're approaching industry, much more effective. Then this is our goal. It's like, hey, here's a bullet list of 6 things. Could you pick any of these that you would help, that you could do? They're actually actions that you would be willing to do. And I think that that's kind of where the rubber hits the road with this whole process. So a little bit much in a half hour. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, anything that they want to share before we kind of close this up? You're a remarkably quiet crowd, I will say.
It is Friday afternoon, morning, depending on where you are.
Depending, we have East, we have Central, and we have West, and Arizona. All right, so our next cohort starts in January. This is our shameless plug.
Oh, that was exactly the question I was going to ask you. If you could tell us a little bit about the process for your workshops and timeline and stuff.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Ken. I didn't even need you as my shill. My 6th shill. You still sound so rough. Anyway, Working Partners Workshop. Our next cohort starts in January. The key outcome again is individual action plans. What you do is you come in with your goals, oftentimes ill-formed and not smart, and we come out the other end with these. At least we end up with 3 items. You learn the process, and you come out with 3 items with action steps for each, that you do the next 3 things you want, the next 3 goals you have that you want to hit. So the idea is to come out with something that you actually can use, surprisingly or not. You also gain a better understanding of partnership best practices. We have guest speakers. We kick around a lot of strategizing about how do you approach people, how do you keep relationships going, what if things go off the rails, that kind of thing. So kind of relationship management. You get to work with your peers collaboratively, and I gotta say, if anybody's been in one of the workshops, everybody raves about how nice it is to get to meet each other and understand what each other are doing. And then there's the links. Rachel's going to put those also into chat if she has not already. The first one is information on the workshops. It gives a little more information. And the second is the application. For winter, we're going to start, I think it's January. I should know this. January 20, I'm going to say 7th. Is that right, Rach?
I believe so. I will look right now, Mary.
26th. It's going to be, it's starting on the 26th of January. It'll run through March 10th, 8 weeks. We will meet on Friday afternoons. Well, Friday afternoons for us. I think that it's actually, yeah, it's 9 a.m. Eastern, right? No, it's noon Eastern. Yeah,
Noon Eastern to 1:30. Yeah, noon to 1:30.
Okay.
Very similar.
Thank you, Friday. So for those of us on the West Coast, it's 9 a.m. So it's for 90 minutes. And like I said, they're mixed up things. You get little tiny assignments each week. We welcome teams of 2. We've had teams of 3, and we've had lots of individuals. So it's not necessary to come with a partner, but coming with a partner means you don't have to make every week sometimes. And also it's really nice to have someone to kick this back and forth with. And again, they're small. It's not big things. We came of age during COVID, and everybody was on Zoom and everybody was on Canvas, and they were like hating every minute of it. So we went ahead and made sure that this was manageable on top of incredibly busy schedules. And also, as a side perk, which I feel negligent if I don't mention it, we do take workshop completers. We have pre-conference sessions at High Tech. In the summer, it's in July. This year it'll be in Kansas City, Missouri. And we pay full travel, conference fee, attendance fee, etc. So, and with a small stipend, through a stipend, but you'll also have some monies for food and such. So we cover costs for you to come to High Tech and participate in a pre-conference meetup with other cohorts, with the other folks that have completed the workshops, and we deepen that a little bit. So there's the application. Here's our general information. That's our website, and that's a generic email you can send things to if you have any questions. And we're really open to answering any kind of questions, any kind of things that come up. Some of the tools are up on the website. We're trying to get more of them up there, but yeah, if there's any questions or anything, feel free to write us or contact us. And that's it.
I have another question for you, Mary.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'm asking for a couple folks that I've been serving as a mentor for, that they're basically brand new program directors. I don't know that they'd be able to join the cohort right in January, since they're still in their first year teaching, basically. Do you have plans for additional cohorts after that? If once they get their first year of teaching under their belt, that they might be able to tap into this?
Yeah, definitely. We're running 2 a year now. We start in January and we start again in May.
Okay.
So, and both of those will still get you to high tech if that's the goal. But yeah, we have one in January, and then we start usually in mid-May. We try to get started before Memorial Day so we can kind of get through by early July.
Excellent. And maybe you answered this already. How many teams per cohort? Is it a
We have
capacity
about,
limited sort of thing that we need to apply quick to get our name on the list, or?
that's a good idea. Because right now it's starting to kind of go fast because of the work at the PI conference, word gets out. But we usually run about 30 to 40 people, individuals. So sometimes what do we have, Rach? I think we had 17 teams and seven individuals, I think, in the last cohort. So it kind of just depends. I mean,
Usually we usually end up with 22 to 30 some people. We try to keep
it gets kind of crazy if it gets too big. And again, it's similar to what we did with the international trips. All the stuff is up on Canvas. So you can access that 24/7. But then we come together just that one time a week to just kind of get through. And we give you feedback on the stuff that gets turned in, not the content. It's not like, this is a bad goal, why are you doing this? But just on how you're shaping it. And, oh, you're looking at these partnership models, have you thought about these? Or, oh, I see what you're talking about now with these action items. Maybe, do these go together? So we give feedback, but not on the content, not telling you how to do it, but more just trying to kind of help with the process, getting people so that they can do this again. The idea is that cyclically you would do more annual planning. That would be the ideal.
Really good sized group for a cohort, though. I can imagine that participants probably get a lot of clever ideas from other folks in the group.
They
too.
definitely do. And we try, it's so funny. It's 6 cohorts. We are 6th cohort. The first one was we talked so much, and we don't now we have a cap of maybe 7 minutes for a presentation, or maybe at the most 10 minutes for us. And we break them up through the 90 minutes so that there's a lot more peer-to-peer work, because that's what people really want. They want to be able to see what other people are doing and talk about their challenges and come up with solutions together. And that's what we want too. So, but thanks for the follow-up questions, Ken.
Oh yeah, thank you.
All right, well, we have hit our time, and I want to thank Mary and Rachel for today. This was fabulous. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and let you guys know that I will have the recording from this up on the Create website sometime next week, and I will send out an email when it is up, and you are welcome to come back and review it at any time if you have questions, and feel free to reach out to Mary or Rachel or myself, and we can connect you with anyone that you need connecting with. And I'm sure you will get emails from me for any upcoming Create events. And we hope to see you online sometime soon, and have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you, guys.
Gabby, thanks for having us.
Hey,
Bye, everybody. Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
thanks for today. It was great.